Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, we're discussing my thoughts on episode 6 of the anime series, Fune or The Great Passage. And if I were to choose a word to describe this episode, it would probably be emotion or emotional. Definitely highly relatable. This episode was pathos-laden as far as I was concerned, and it featured what I would probably call the most accurate visible description or portrayal of the feelings of anxiety that I've ever seen, probably in anything ever, as well as depression to a degree, with everything cascading over Majime's head in this episode, from the just absolute bomb drop revelation that I was actually really surprised Nishioka, was so soon to let everyone know, his co-workers on the Great Passage, that he'd be moving departments to the PR department per the boss's orders and everything like that, and that he's no longer going to be able to carry the weight of this project. A lot of that stuff now transfers over to Majime. Not only does he have his own workload, but now he's going to have to pick up the slack where Nishioka isn't going to be there anymore. And I just think it was a stand-up thing for Nishioka to do, not mince words, not leave everyone hanging, expecting he'd be around for longer than he was. Of course, they were touching upon how long they're going to be working on the Great Passage. I think they projected 10 years. Would they still be waiting around to get this thing published? And with all the talk, especially calling back on the first ever dictionary ever published in Japan, the idea of words and adaptability and definitions and how those things evolve over time, I almost have to wonder, how far along language and words and definitions are going to have evolved by the time this thing might actually get published. But of course, Majime now has to consider all those things that he's going to have to do with this unfortunate scenario that Nishioka, his tried and true friend, this stand-up guy, as we've seen, in the last episode, he was saying he would carry as much of that weight as he could with the time remaining to him, left to him in this department. So we know he's a good guy. We know that both of these dudes, Majime and Nishioka, they respect each other, they admire each other, they both have things to teach each other. And you see very instantly that Majime, he just crushes under the weight of that. He's already dealing with the love letter, the 15-page, very elaborate love letter he gave to Kaguya. And as he's leaving in the morning, I guess maybe he's thinking about getting out of there as early as possible, because it was a long, sleepless night for him. He was expecting her to come, a call in like probably a half hour later, and she never did. Many a night I was very similarly, endowed with a situation of worry and concern, and, does she like me? Doesn't she? Am I getting rejected? What's going on? And I could highly relate to that scenario. And it was almost painful, nail-bitingly to watch, seeing that he spent that whole night in the company of his little cat and everything, and that's the only company he had. And so then, crack of dawn, he's like trying to skip out early, and he happens to run across her, have a brief confrontation with her on the steps as she's coming down to ask him about it, which he has no idea. None of us have any idea that's what's going on until much later. He just skips out. He's completely freaked out, nerve-wracked. He doesn't know what the hell to make of anything. He figures he's been rejected. And of course, this is where he's talking to Nishioka once again, seeking guidance, seeking advice. And Nishioka's just like, look, you gotta put a clamp on this, man. You gotta figure it out. You can't sit here wondering what if forever and a day, and having this thing be a plague to your life. Get it done already. Go talk to her, find out how she feels about it. And this, of course, is something that doesn't happen. It gets pushed back because of that bomb drop revelation of Nishioka's time being very limited. And Majime having to now consider all the legwork, all the calling around. We've already seen from episode 1 that he was in a position of sort of being a salesman, going around trying to have people buy products and goods and services or whatever it was. And that's kind of what he's going to have to do now. He's going to have to go around and get people interested in investing, whether it be time or money, in the production of this work, editing and all that kind of stuff, get editors and writers involved. And he doesn't have the most outgoing, winning personality. So it's going to be quite the challenge, very much along the lines as I've touched upon in previous episode discussion videos, of his being a flower to bloom, and now forcibly so. The job, the employee is going to push him in that direction, whether he wants to be or not. Very much is he merely a twig on this mighty riverbed that is just flowing like crazy. And we see very visibly that oncoming storm of clouds and torrential flooding that sucks him up like so much quicksand. It's like he can't breathe. It's like he's being consumed by the emotion, the height of anxiety, and it's just crushing him. It's just sucking him into it. And it's like, my God, when he's finally home, and he's completely blacked out of it. He's trying to make some ramen and he's trying to make some tea, and he's completely oblivious to the tea kettle whistling. I mean, the old lady upstairs has to yell down to him, "Do you hear it?" A couple of times before probably snapping him out of this reverie. And he kind of crawls to his room. The little cat is nowhere to be found. He hasn't even put out his bed linens and everything, his makeup to lay down. He just lays on the floor, not really knowing which way is up. And finally he goes soul searching around the apartment. They have like a whole library room, which was kind of majestic. And it was, again, something I could highly relate to, when feeling such depressive emotions, when feeling such anxiety. I mean, there have been many times I've taken very much comfort in reading books or even flipping through a dictionary, sometimes coloring in a coloring book. Even at this adult age, it's like it's something very soothing, simplistic and soothing. Sometimes just flipping through a dictionary and reading through words I'm familiar with or unfamiliar with, just learning new definitions. I may not retain them all, but it's something to assuage the immediacy of that, fever pitch emotion of worry and dread and all these things. And that's kind of what he does. He kind of allays his own frustrations and worries by doing that. And conveniently, they have a copy of that first ever published dictionary, as they were referencing earlier in the episode. And he's really reflecting on the idea of words being adaptable and being something that evolves over time, where certain meanings and definitions fall by the wayside. And it's very much telegraphing humanity. Each and every human being lives and dies. They leave certain legacies in the people whose lives they've touched or been touched by. And life keeps moving on. And so he finally kind of gets that idea of, a certain level of resolve that I'm going to turn this on its ear. I'm actually going to put my all into creating the Great Passage. It's something that needs to be done. It's something I want to see done, not merely for myself, but for everyone involved in it. For Nishioka, for, the two heads of the project, for the woman secretary, or whatever her official position is, everyone involved in the project. And I think I had the impression as well that it was a level of taking Nishioka's advice, that he would confront Kaguya and try to find out how she feels. And he actually does man up, and he does confront her when she has come home from her employ. And I almost had to laugh out loud, because her reaction is mirroring exactly what his reaction was earlier that day. She completely freaks out and runs away. It was so freaking adorable. And just when I'm about to cry because of how lonely and dreadful Majime has been brought to feeling. Even the cat is not there. The old lady talking to the cat earlier, do you have a girlfriend? Is that where you've been sneaking off to? And then, of course, she's talking to the cat about the relationship status between Kaguya and Majime as well, which was hilarious. But, when Kaguya made her way to Majime's room, my breath caught in my throat. I was like, oh man, maybe it's going to play out differently than I think it will. And I was so at the height of emotion. I was just like, man, how's this going to happen? What's going to happen? He's surprised that she's there. I thought it was kind of classy that she walks in barefoot too. I mean, I know you're not, supposed to wear like shoes around the Japanese homestead and everything, but like, it just shows that she's comfortable around him to not feel the need to get slippers on or socks on or something. At least that's the impression I got in the moment. And it was simply the cutest thing ever to see these two talking it out. She thought it was probably a love letter, but then because of how, overwrought with definitions and words and meanings and all these complex things that he put into it. She started to backpedal. She wasn't sure. And that's why she was coming to talk to him in the morning. She just wanted to see if she had the right idea. Because she too, when they were on the Ferris wheel, she too has feelings for him. And it just like those sad tears that I was on the verge of shedding became happy tears. They were still there and they were still coming out as Majime's understanding this and hearing this and processing it. It's like taking him a little bit. You can see he's a little slow on the upswing, but he finally has that moment of being wide-eyed, mouth agape, and realizing she's here because she feels that way too. And it's like, oh man, it was so relieving and so satisfying at the same time. It was so beautiful, so adorable and cute, and like, yes, this is what I wanted, and this is what I want for me too. It's like, I can only hope this will be the outline for me someday, finding someone to connect with as much as these two have connected. And man, just ending the episode that way, I was so grateful. Because it was so dark in so many places, in so many ways. It was ripping at my ever-loving soul, and how, as I say, identifiable it was, how much pathos there was in the scenario, and to see these two come together in the end. And what took her so long was that she reread it after he professed that, encountered her on the steps and said it was a love letter. She wanted to take another chance, take another stab at reading it, just to really try to endear to her own mind what he was trying to say before coming and revealing herself to him as well. And, oh man, I just fell in love with it. It was just great. And so yeah, I love this series. This is my favorite episode thus far for its ending, and for, as well, as I say again, just visibly portraying and displaying the height of anxiety, how it can feel like you're lost to it, you're being consumed by it, but then to have such an affirming ending, and one that was well earned, I think, because Majime, he had finally made the choice to confront her and find out, how she felt. And I think for his part that took a lot of courage, and if only we could all be so courageous sometimes. No, I sure as hell ain't. More often than I care to admit. But, yeah. So, bring on the next one. Can't wait to see where we go from here. Otherwise, it'll be pretty much it for me on this. If this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.